Hi guys. So how would you feel if you've kept yourself for so many years only to lose it in an unexpected manner to a total stranger just to please your family? This is the case of Mara, a 22-year-old girl who lost her virginity to a total stranger, and after that night her life changed. So many dramas started evolving in her life. So before we go into this interesting and amazing story, please, I would love you to subscribe if you haven't. If you have, I really appreciate. Please like and comment. Share this story to your loved ones. So thank you for doing that. So let's dive in. Let's start from the beginning of this story. In the beautiful city of Ion, there lived a young man named Kingsley. Kingsley had a very strong desire for sex and couldn't afford to spend the night alone. Every night, he felt the urge to find a girl on the streets and take her home with him. He couldn't seem to resist this temptation, and it became a regular part of his daily routine. Despite being 45 years old and successful, he took his work very seriously and had achieved financial stability. But this aspect of his personal life really troubled him, although his friends suggested that he settles down and start a family and his sexual desires would reduce. Kingsley had his reservations. He dreamt of marrying a virgin, but he believed it was nearly impossible to find one in the city where he lived. He noticed that many people around were involved in activities like prostitution and casual hookups. On the outer side of the city, in a small village called Ire, there lived two poor orphaned sisters named Josephine and Mara. They struggled to navigate through life, and life was so hard for them. Josephine and Mara shared a close resemblance. Josephine was 24 years old and Mara was just 22 years old. Despite their bond, their path in life was very different. Josephine engaged in prostitution to make ends meet for herself and her sister, while Mara was always home trying to look for the best possible ways to help out at home because she didn't want to live that kind of lifestyle. One day, Josephine got really sick with malaria and she couldn't do her job anymore. She asked Mara to do it instead, but Mara said no because she didn't want to have sex with just a stranger. This made Josephine really angry because she needed the money to take care of herself. She felt like her sister was letting her down now that she needed her the most. Like Mara was not helping them survive like they had promised each other. Josephine told Mara she had to go do the work or she move out of the house. Mara stayed firm and said she wouldn't change her mind because she wanted to keep her virginity and stick to her beliefs and moral, but then she had nowhere else to go. Reluctantly, Mara decided to do it. Josephine dressed her in her own clothes, necklace, bracelets, and earrings before she left in a very revealing clothes. She stood by the roadside waiting for a cab. While she waited, an expensive car pulled up in front of her, and it was Kingsley. He asked her how much for a night, and Mara was still feeling bitter, reluctantly named the price. Then Kingsley invited her into the car. Inside the car, Kingsley began to touch Mara's legs, complimenting her beauty. Despite her irritation, she tried to smile, though her true feelings were evident in her expression. When they arrived at the hotel, Mara felt very nervous. Kingsley suggested they go to a club to have fun before heading to the room, but Mara didn't agree. However, Kingsley promised to pay her more money, so she reluctantly accepted. In the club, Kingsley offered Mara a drink, but she refused because she doesn't drink and she doesn't know much about these kind of places. Kingsley insisted, and eventually, Mara felt pressured to drink. Mara's main reason for being there in the first place was to avoid being kicked out of the house by her sister. Kingsley noticed Mara's hesitance and timidness. He assumed she was new to this kind of work. Mara became very drunk that night and she couldn't function properly. Seeing this, Kingsley decided to take her to the room he had arranged for himself and her. He gently placed her on the bed and then left to freshen up. Kingsley entered the room and tried to wake Mara up, but she wasn't responding well due to being heavily intoxicated. He then proceeded to undress both himself and Mara in her intoxicated state. Mara managed to protest against Kingsley's advances, telling him she was a virgin. However, Kingsley dismissed her words, thinking she was just talking because she was drunk. He continued trying to be intimate with her, but Mara kept repeating that she was a virgin. Mara cried out, "I am not a prostitute. I just needed this money so my sister won't send me away from her house," she cried. Frustrated, Kingsley insisted she stops talking and eventually raised his voice, telling her that her payment is on the table and to be quiet. Mara finally complied and Kingsley proceeded with his actions despite her continued objection. Kingsley had never kissed the street girls before. He just went directly inside them without any form of romance. But this time, he felt like kissing Mara. He felt she was special and admired her beautiful and innocent face. He kissed and romanced her. Then he went inside her, though while wearing protection. It was his first time of enjoying sex in a long while. He enjoyed himself before they both slept off. Kingsley woke up in the morning expecting to see Mara beside him, but she wasn't there. Confused, he looked around the room, but Mara was nowhere to be found. As Kingsley got out of bed, he noticed blood stain on the bed sheets. He was so shocked and alarmed. He realized the significance of the stains and what has really occurred during the night. Despite his initial admiration of Mara, Kingsley felt really bad because he realized Mara was telling the truth about being a virgin. He regretted taking her virginity for money. As he walked to the bathroom, he saw Mara's necklace she had left behind. Kingsley felt really bad about what happened with Mara. He knew he had to find her and apologize, so he quickly got dressed and left the hotel to look for her. What happened that morning was, when Mara woke up, she felt really ashamed of herself. She left in a hurry, not wanting to see Kingsley or anyone from that night. She went home really down, and when she got home, she gave all the money given to her by Kingsley to Josephine. Josephine felt really happy seeing the huge amount of money because nobody had ever paid her so much for one night. Mara hissed in pain as she walked slowly, feeling discomfort from her encounter with Kingsley. Josephine laughed and told her she would get used to it if she kept doing that kind of work. And from the bathroom, Mara rejected Josephine's suggestion, firmly saying she would never do it again. She cried in the shower, feeling cheap and ashamed of what happened the previous night. Meanwhile, Kingsley ran to the street with the necklace, hoping to find Mara, but his search was unsuccessful. So he decided to go back home and get ready for work. At work, Kingsley couldn't shake off the memory of Mara, pleading with him, saying she just needed money and wasn't a street girl. The thought weighed him down, made him so restless throughout the day. After work that day, he hurried to the spot where he had picked Mara up, hoping to find her there, but she wasn't there. Desperate to find her, Kingsley described Mara to other girls working in the area, but none of them knew her. Kingsley realized he didn't even know her name or phone number, or even where she lived. The only clue he had was the necklace she had left behind in the hotel room. For 2 whole weeks, Kingsley searched for Mara, and it was the hardest time he had ever faced in his lifetime. Even though he usually couldn't go a night without being with a woman, but he managed to stay away for a whole 2 weeks. Mara's innocence stuck in Kingsley's mind. After his unsuccessful effort to find Mara, Kingsley decided to return to his normal routine. One evening, coming back from work, he picked up another street girl from the streets and took her to his hotel room. But as soon as she tried to get close to him, it was like he was seeing Mara, and he smiled. But when the new girl touched him, he realized she was different and he felt really irritated. This reaction was really unlike him. As Mara's image clouded his mind, he offered the street girl money to go home, and he decided to hang out with his friends instead. While Kingsley was with his friends, he felt down but couldn't bring himself to admit that he was in love with a girl he met on the street once. He knew his friend would tease him about it. One of his friends noticed Kingsley's mood and tried to cheer him up. He showed him a photo of a beautiful girl on Facebook. Kingsley wasn't interested at first, but he insisted. So when Kingsley looked at the photo, he saw Josephine wearing the same necklace that Mara had left behind. He asked his friend to send him the screenshot of Josephine's profile. Later, when Kingsley was home, he checked Josephine's profile and saw a picture of her that looked a lot like Mara, wearing the same necklace. He felt like he had finally found the person he had been looking for more than 2 weeks. Since Josephine's number was on her profile, Kingsley decided to take one note of it. He tried calling Josephine, but she couldn't answer. Josephine decided he would try calling her again. The next day, when he weren't at work, Kingsley called Josephine again and she finally picked up. "Hello, Josephine." "Hi, it's Kingsley," he said. "I'm really sorry about what happened the other night. I took your virginity just for money and I feel very terrible about it. Please, I would want to see you again and give you back the necklace you left behind." Josephine, cleverly realizing Kingsley was referring to her sister Mara, played along. She asked Kingsley how he got her number, and he explained he found it on Facebook. They agreed to meet at the mall to exchange the necklace. At the mall that day, Kingsley and Josephine made up, although he noticed some differences with Josephine compared to Mara. Her face was the same, but the naive and innocent girl wasn't there. He apologized again, and asked her not to go back to the streets. Josephine explained that she had to due to her aunt's demands. "My aunt will send me out of the house if I don't go to the streets," Josephine replied. "I have nowhere else to go or stay." Kingsley offered her enough money to find accommodation and start a business for herself so she wouldn't have to return to the streets again. Gratefully, Josephine accepted, and Kingsley gave her a check for a large amount of money before they said their goodbye. When Kingsley got home, he felt like something was different. He couldn't shake off the feeling that Josephine seemed more exposed. After thinking it over, he assumed it was because they hadn't seen each other after a long time. That same day, Josephine got home feeling incredibly excited. "I have hit the jackpot," she said to herself. "Not only will I have to live here, but I'll also be able to get a shop for myself and have a handsome and wealthy guy like Kingsley." Josephine was just on top of the world. A few days later, she started packing her things in the house when Mara asked her where she was going. Josephine replied aggressively, "See, I'm finding my own way. I can't keep staying in this dirty place. You can find your own way too, but as for me, I am leaving." Mara pleaded with her to at least tell her where she was going, but she refused to share any details. Josephine moved to a new house out of the village, and Mara was left there all alone, suffering. Josephine started a big clothing business. Kingsley continued to communicate with her over the phone, and he was happy to hear that she was doing well. However, he still felt like something was missing. Kingsley decided to take Josephine to his house and showed her where he lived. And to her surprise, he lived alone. Josephine's eyes widened and she smiled to herself, realizing that her life had changed for the better. Kingsley continued to support Josephine financially so that she wouldn't lack anything at all. One day, Kingsley arrived at work to find his office in a mess. He called his secretary to inquire why. The cleaner hadn't shown up for days, only to learn that the cleaner had stopped coming. She resigned. The secretary quickly tidied up the office herself, and Kingsley instructed her to put up a notice outside the office for a position of a cleaner. Meanwhile, Mara had been searching for a job outside of her village, near the city, but it was difficult for her to make ends meet since Josephine had left. When she saw the signboard advertised for the position of a cleaner at Kingsley's office, she wasted no time and applied for the job. The secretary asked her to start work the next day. Mara resumed work late that day and quickly began sweeping the office. When Kingsley entered and saw his dusty table, he instructed his secretary to call the new cleaner to clean his table and mop the floor, which she did. As Kingsley turned to make a phone call, Mara entered the office to clean the table and chairs. In the process, she accidentally knocked over a file, causing both her and Kingsley to bend down to pick it up. Their hands collided, and when they looked at each other, they recognized each other's faces. Kingsley was so shocked. Mara tried to run from the office, but Kingsley stopped her by holding her waist from behind. Mara apologized, saying she was sorry for being rude to the boss. Kingsley saw the innocence on her face. the same innocence he had seen the night they had met. Feeling a deep connection as he touched her, Kingsley realized there was something special about Mara. He asked her why she was there after he had opened a big shop for her. Mara simply replied, "I'm sorry, sir. Please let me go," Mara demanded. That minute, Josephine called him. They talked while Mara was in front of him. Kingsley asked Josephine where she was, and Josephine said she was at the shop. Kingsley seemed so shocked and asked Mara who she was. Mara shivered with fear, pleaded with him to let her go. Kingsley assured her that he wouldn't hurt her. He persuaded her to sit down. He then asked her if she had a twin, but Mara replied that she only had an elder sister who looked exactly like her, and people often mistook them for twins. Still surprised, Kingsley asked for her name and she replied Mara. Kingsley then showed her the photo his friend had sent him earlier. "This necklace, you forgot it in the hotel room that day. Is this not you wearing the same necklace in this photo?" Kingsley asked. "Oh, that's my elder sister. How did you get her photo on your phone?" Mara asked. Kingsley replied, "Never mind." He shifted closer to where Mara was. He apologized sincerely for hurting her that night and explained that he had been searching for her ever since then. He acknowledged that he had made a mistake by taking her virginity in such a way, and he asked Mara to give him a chance to make things right. Mara insisted that he hadn't done anything wrong because he had paid for the services, but Kingsley continued to plead for her forgiveness. He then asked for her phone number, but Mara didn't have a phone. When he requested for her address, she explained that the place didn't have an address. Despite their conversation, Mara expressed her desire to continue her work because she had other offices to clean. Kingsley angrily told Mara that she wouldn't work as a cleaner anymore. He then took her to buy her a phone and accompanied her back home. When they arrived, Kingsley noticed photos of Mara and Josephine on the wall and the poor condition of the room. As he was going through the photos, the landlord arrived to throw Mara's belongings out of the house because she has owed rent for almost 5 months. Despite Kingsley's attempt to reason with the landlord, he refused to listen. In response, Kingsley gathered Mara's belongings and took her to his own home. Mara had many emotions when she moved in with Kingsley. She was grateful for his help, but at the same time, she felt really uncomfortable. Kingsley really wanted to assist Mara, but he could notice that Mara seemed uncomfortable staying in his home. He decided to find her a better place where she would stay alone. He called his lawyer to help arrange for a house. While Kingsley was talking on the phone, Mara walked in unexpectedly. Kingsley quickly ended the call and told the lawyer he would call him back. Curious, Mara asked why Kingsley was doing so much for her and when she had nothing to offer in return. Kingsley reassured her that he didn't expect anything in return and just wanted her to relax. But Mara, feeling uncertain, suggested that if Kingsley brought her here just to be into her again, then she wouldn't stay. Kingsley responded firmly, saying he called his lawyer to find her a better place for accommodation. He confessed his feelings for Mara, saying that he liked her a lot and he was in love with her. However, he emphasized that he wouldn't force her to accept his feelings. Instead, he promised to assist her regardless of the relationship status. The next day, Kingsley and Mara went to see different apartments. Kingsley said he would pay for whichever one Mara liked. They visited a few places, but Mara didn't like any of them, even though the apartments they saw were all nice and costly. Mara felt she could trust Kingsley and started thinking about staying with him in his house. Kingsley and Mara went back to his house. He promised that he would go look for apartments the next day so she could choose one she liked. But Mara surprised him by saying she wanted to stay in the house with him. She asked him to promise not to be physical with her. Kingsley smiled with excitement and said, "I am grateful you trust me. I promise I won't come close to you except you want me to." Mara smiled and replied, "So you still want to get closer? But with my consent, Abby?" Kingsley responded sarcastically, saying, "Yes, because I love you so much. You changed me. Since that day we met in the hotel, I stopped womanizing. I couldn't go a day without touching a woman before, but you indirectly or maybe directly turned me away from all women." Kingsley was curious about Mara's background, so he asked her to share more about herself. He wanted to know where she grew up, about her family, and what happened that made her end up on the streets that day. Mara shared with Kingsley that both her parents had passed away a while back, leaving her with just her elder sister. Life in the village was very tough, so they decided to move to the city to try make a living. They had planned to work hard, but unfortunately, her sister ended up on the streets. Despite this, her sister always took care of the bills. However, on that day, her sister was sick and unable to work. She felt pressure to go out and hustle to make money. Her sister even threatened to kick her out of the house if she didn't go. With nowhere else to go, she had to accept. As Mara recounted her story, tears streaming down her eyes, Kingsley felt a wave of empathy for her and put her into a comforting hug as she cried. Meanwhile, it had been a week since Josephine had been trying to reach Kingsley, but he refused to answer her calls because he knew very much well she was an imposter. Despite his avoidance, Josephine decided to pay him a visit at his house. Mara and Kingsley had been good friends after they had to have discussion. Mara felt more safer with him and he appreciated her trust. So one day, while they were relaxing at home, there was a knock on the door. Kingsley went to answer it and to Mara's surprise, it was Josephine. Josephine looked shocked to see Mara in Kingsley's house. She looked at Mara suspiciously. "Why are you here?" she asked sharply. Mara felt scared. "I am staying with Kingsley," she said. Josephine softened a bit just not to look suspicious, but still she seemed so angry. "Why are you staying with him?" she asked Mara. Mara glanced at Kingsley for help. "Well, the thing is, Kingsley is helping me find a place to stay," she explained. "I didn't have anywhere else to go, Josephine." Josephine turned to Kingsley, looking angry again. "Why did you bring my sister here?" she demanded. "No, why is she here?" "I'm helping Mara." he said with a serious look. She needed a place to stay since you left her and you are pretending to be her. Josephine folded her lips and asked, pretending to be her? How? How am I pretending to be her? She asked. Well, you can just stop pretending. I'm relieved that I finally found the real Mara. Josephine tried to pull Mara away, insisting they go to their house, but Mara refused and Kingsley stepped in to protect her. Leave her alone, Josephine, Kingsley said firmly. Josephine glared at Mara, threatening to deal with her later before storming out of the house, feeling very furious that Mara might take Kingsley away from her. When Josephine got home that day, she decided to visit her uncles and aunts in the village to seek their help in evicting Mara from Kingsley's house. So she journeyed to the village and lied to her relative, who had never helped her and Mara before, to come and take Mara away from Kingsley. They all agreed and arrived in the city. Josephine took them in to Kingsley's house, but unfortunately, Kingsley was not around. Mara opened the door and welcomed them. The aunts and uncles entered the house knowing Kingsley would be a very rich man, so they wanted to strike a deal for their own selfish reasons. The aunts and uncles spoke among themselves and agreed to wait for Kingsley to return. However, Josephine was impatient and wanted them to forcefully remove Mara from the house. This is not what she planned. But because of the uncle's really own selfish reasons, they realized that if they took Mara out of Kingsley's house and Kingsley returned without seeing her, he might file a police report against them. Mara decided to call Kingsley to come home due to an emergency, and he really rushed home only to find a lot of strangers in his house. He greeted them and they introduced themselves as Mara's parental relatives. They told Kingsley they came to take Mara away because it was against their tradition for a girl to stay in the house, same with a man who isn't her husband. Oh, I'm so sorry. If that is the problem, I would really love to marry Mara. When Josephine heard this, she got very angry. The uncles and aunts replied to Kingsley, now you are talking. Now you are really talking. They invited Kingsley to their village to take the list for marriage arrangements. Josephine angrily told her uncles, this wasn't the reason why I invited you. I invited you here to take Mara home from this house, but now you are arranging marriage. This is not our plan, uncle. Kingsley promised Mara's family that he would come to the village in 3 days' time to take the list and make necessary arrangements. He gave them a large amount of money for transportation expenses. This made Josephine very angry and very furious because her plan had backfired on her. After Josephine and her uncles left, Mara, very angry, confronted Kingsley about why he had to promise to go to the village and take the marriage list without even asking for her consent first. Kingsley replied that it's the best thing I could think of at that moment. Mara became more angry and rushed out of the sitting room after a heated argument with Kingsley. Kingsley went to her room to talk to her, expressing his deep feeling and desire to be her husband. He pleaded with her, telling her that he really loved her and promised never to hurt her. But Mara refused, and Kingsley, feeling defeated, thought that he would return to his old ways, at least to take things off his head. He left her room, but Mara ran after him and held him from behind, telling him not to go. She confessed that she really liked him too I had grown to love him but was just scared of getting hurt. Kingsley promised to never hurt her or even do anything at all to make her cry, and she finally agreed to marry him. Hearing that made Kingsley incredibly happy. He hugged her tightly and kissed her forehead. Meanwhile, Josephine was at home worrying about what to do next since her plan had failed. She couldn't let Mara have such a rich man to herself, so she began plotting her next move. Josephine decided to call Mara on the phone to let her know how Kingsley was hiding a very big secret from her. Mara demanded to know about what Josephine said, but Josephine said she would give her the whole details later. But this information really got Mara worried. Mara and Kingsley planned to visit her hometown to get the marriage list and inform the people formally. Even though Mara was worried, Kingsley took her to meet his uncles first and other family members. They approved of her and welcomed her. But Mara tried to be happy, but the fear stayed with her. What could he be hiding? She asked herself repeatedly. Kingsley tried to know what the problem was, but she wouldn't say. One day, while Mara was out, Josephine called again. Her voice this time was very serious, and Mara knew something was wrong. Josephine told her that Kingsley was hiding something big from her, that he had HIV. Mara felt shocked and said nothing. Kingsley had kept this from her. She knew she had to talk to him and find out the truth. She couldn't believe without hearing Kingsley's side of the story. So once she got home, she hurried to Kingsley's room to talk to him. But as she approached the room, she overheard him talking on the phone. He sounded very urgent, saying he needed some medicine because he was very sick. Mara's heart sank as she listened in shock. She felt like Josephine's word had been confirmed, and she believed Kingsley did really have HIV, just like Josephine had said. Feeling betrayed and hurt, she quietly left to her room, tears streaming down her eyes. She couldn't believe that Kingsley had kept such a big secret from her, especially after knowing he was sick, not just sick, with HIV. She felt like she had been kept in the dark, and the realization left her feeling broken and alone, betrayed and used. Meanwhile, the medicine Kingsley urgently needed was actually for his uncle, who was too unwell to accompany them for the marriage. Kingsley was worried about his uncle's health and absence, explaining the urgency to the pharmacist, asking for the medicine as quickly as possible. But Mara overheard only that part of the conversation, and she misunderstood everything. She assumed Kingsley was referring to himself as being sick and urgently needed drugs. This misunderstanding deepened her belief that Kingsley had HIV and had betrayed her. She couldn't bring herself to confront him about what she heard. She struggled with the weight of the emotions between her love for him and the fear of what his secret might mean for their future together. Mara called Josephine and told her that Kingsley was really having this virus. Even though Josephine knew it wasn't true, she acted like she believed. Josephine told her to leave the house right away because she might contract the infection or the virus. She was worried Kingsley might give her the virus. Feeling scared and confused, Mara agreed to leave that night. She promised to meet Josephine outside and they would run away together. Kingsley noticed and asked her what was wrong, but Mara brushed it aside. As night fell, Mara quickly packed some of her belongings and headed towards the door, intending to leave without Kingsley's awareness. However, unknown to her, Kingsley was outside making some phone calls. Just as Mara reached the door, Kingsley called out her name, startling her. He asked her where she was going with her bag at this late hour. Mara felt shocked and caught off guard, but she knew she couldn't hide the truth from him any longer. So with a heavy heart, Mara decided to confront him. She told him that she won't marry him because he had lied to her and kept something very important as his health from her. She accused him of having HIV and not telling her about it, despite their plans of marriage. Mara, where did you hear that information from? Where did you get it from? Kingsley asked, looking confused and surprised. And why didn't you ask me instead? And you just want to leave just like that? Mara. Mara replied it was Josephine that told her, and when I came to your room to ask you, I overheard you urgently asking for a drug on the phone, saying you are very sick. Hey, Kingsley laughed out. That medicine was for my uncle Mara. I had to hurry the pharmacist so they could bring it quickly so that my uncle could get well soon and join us for the wedding. So you trust Josephine more than you trust me? It's fine. You can go if you want to. You believe I've been keeping things from you. Just leave. I don't want to be with someone who doesn't trust me. Mara, I've shown you how much I care and love you, but you've taken me for granted. You can go. Good night. Just lock the door after you. Mara felt the sincerity in Kingsley's voice. Realizing she needed to apologize, she tried to enter Kingsley's room, but then Josephine called Mara, and Mara ignored her call. She turned off her phone. She went into Kingsley's room to ask for forgiveness, but he told her to leave or he would leave instead. Mara approached him and held him from behind romantically, but Kingsley remained upset. Mara turned him around and hugged him, apologizing and promising that the incident won't ever happen again. She kissed him on the cheek. Wait, just a mere kiss on the cheek. I would need more than that to forgive you, Kingsley said. Mara, feeling shy, asked him, what more do you want? Kingsley held her cheek and said, I just want you to love me and trust me. Mara thought Kingsley was going to talk about intimacy, but he actually said the opposite. Kingsley assured her, I won't force you if you don't want us to be intimate. It will be with your consent, Mara. Mara smiled mischievously and said, I give my consent, but you have to catch me first. With that, she dashed out of the room, and Kingsley ran after her. They played a game of hide and seek, and laughter filled the air as they chased each other around. After a while, they both grew tired from the playful pursuits, and she sat down on the couch in the sitting room. Kingsley and Mara sat close together on the couch, holding hands, feeling a rush of affection. Mara leaned in and kissed Kingsley softly on the lips. He took that as a go-ahead and responded so aggressively, like a hungry lion. They had a good time that night. Kingsley was as gentle as a dove, making sure they both explore each other's body. Moments filled with passion. to the bedroom, their movement filled with passion. Meanwhile, Josephine grew tired of waiting for Mara outside Kingsley's compound. Feeling frustrated and impatient, she decided to leave. The next morning, Kingsley woke up very early to prepare something special for Mara. He decided to make breakfast for her. He went to the kitchen and found some eggs, breads, and fruits. He made scrambled eggs and toast. He also cut some fruits to put on the side. After preparing the breakfast, he carried it carefully to his room. He wanted to surprise her with breakfast in bed. Mara was still asleep when he entered the room. Kingsley gently woke her up and presented the breakfast to her. She was very surprised and delighted by Kingsley's thoughtful gesture. Kingsley decided to spend the day with her. So the next day, on his way to work, he decided to call Josephine and have a serious conversation with her. He wanted her to stay away from his relationship with Mara. Josephine responded that the only way she would consider staying away from Mara was if Kingsley paid her off. Shocked by Josephine's demand, Kingsley asked her how much she needed. To his disbelief, Josephine replied that she also wanted to have a one-night stand with him, in addition to the money he was going to give her. "You must be out of your mind, Josephine," Kingsley responded. "You should even be grateful to me, Kingsley. If I hadn't forced Mara outside that night, you wouldn't have met her or even have a glimpse of her." That was Josephine talking. "I am so disappointed in you, Josephine. Instead of being happy for your own sister, you have turned yourself into an enemy." He angrily ended the call. That same afternoon, Kingsley arrived to pick up Mara. They went shopping for things they needed for the wedding. On the day of the wedding, Kingsley made sure there were security measures in place to prevent anything from going wrong. All Josephine's attempt to sabotage the wedding was unsuccessful. The wedding proceeded smoothly and Kingsley and Mara were successfully married. They returned to the city as a happily married couple. Josephine was deeply hurt by Kingsley's marriage to Mara. Full of anger, she began to destroy everything in her house. She felt betrayed, thinking, "I sacrificed so much for Mara, and now I have neither a man or money. It would be better if Kingsley dies, so we could be even. Both of us can be single." She vowed not to let them be happy, believing that if she had no husband, Mara shouldn't have. She said with a bitter laugh. 2 months later, the newly wedded couple enjoyed their moment of happiness together as they celebrated their marriage. The following day, Mara woke up feeling very scared. She had a very bad dream and she dreamed that her husband Kingsley got killed. He shouted out loud and Kingsley woke up too. He asked her what was wrong. Mara hugged him tight and said she had a scary dream where he got killed. She didn't want him to go out that day, so she just wanted him to stay with her. Kingsley hugged her back and told her not to worry. It was just a mere dream. He had to go to work. It had been a month since they got married and he needed to go back to work. He promised to be careful. Mara watched him go, feeling sad but hoping he would be okay. On his way to work, he spotted two men fighting in the middle of the road. He waited for them to clear, but no, they weren't leaving. He ignored them and waited still. Then he decided to step out of his car to intervene. However, he didn't realize that these men were actually thugs hired by Josephine. As Kingsley approached them, the thugs revealed guns hidden in their pockets and threatened to shoot him if he didn't follow them. Terrified, Kingsley complied and followed them. They led him to a very deserted area in the bush. Once they were alone, the thugs mercilessly beat Kingsley up, while Josephine watched laughing. Kingsley pleaded with Josephine to spare his life for her sister's sake. "If I can't be happy, then Mara shouldn't be happy either," Josephine responded. The thugs dug a shallow grave and tried to bury him alive, and two people smoking in the bush saw what was happening and immediately started shouting, and other boys arrived. They freed Kingsley and some of them rushed him to the hospital, while some took Josephine and the thugs to the police station. They arrived at the hospital. The doctors and nurses worked urgently to save Kingsley's life. They treated his injuries. Mara was at home, worried. She couldn't stop thinking about the scary dream she had. She tried calling Kingsley, but he didn't answer. So he went to his office, but was told he wasn't there. This made Mara even more worried. She blamed herself for not convincing Kingsley to stay at home. Meanwhile, Kingsley at the hospital requested for his phone and immediately called her. Mara's joy knew no bound. He narrated how Josephine abducted him and nearly killed him. Mara could not believe her own sister could do such a thing to her. She decided to go see Josephine at the police station and ask her what she actually did wrong to her. You want to be happy alone, right? I sacrificed my body for you, Mara. I sacrificed my youthful age for you. You ended up marrying a rich man while I'm alone? Josephine said with no remorse. Josephine and her accomplice were sentenced to 20 years imprisonment. And that was when she started regretting her actions, but it was too late. Despite feeling remorse for her action, she understood that her regret couldn't undo the harm she had caused, now facing the consequences of her choices. She grappled with the weight of her decision, but however, it was a harsh lesson learned too late, and she had to come to terms with the irreversible consequences of her actions. Kingsley was ever grateful to Mara for transforming him from a womanizer into a more responsible person. So in return, Kingsley surprised Mara with a luxurious shop fully stocked with goods. Mara was so overwhelmed with joy and gratitude, thanking Kingsley for coming into her life, even though it was an unpleasant way. So guys, this is it for this amazing story. I hope you really enjoyed it and learned one or two lessons from it. I personally learned from this story that whatever you try to do to bring someone down, just know and remember that it's going to backfire, whether now or later. What you sow, you shall reap. Thank you very much for watching, and I want you to tell me the lessons that you've learned from this story in the comment section. See, I come your way next time. Bye.